GPA in the major. Okay, we have a calculator for that on the website on the Blackboard community page. Hi, sorry, come on. Let's see, so a 3.5 GPA in the major. It is a 2-semester commitment in your senior year. You need a research project lined up before you apply. Your application then has to be approved by Ann. Again, and she'll talk about how that happens and some of the specifics there, but that'll be on your Blackboard community page as well. So after your 2-semester commitment, it culminates in a thesis. It's a really great opportunity to put something on your resume, your graduate school applications. It also does show up on your transcript. I can't tell you exactly how because we don't ever see the transcripts after you graduate, but it does show up. We know we're being asked. And you do get a cord at graduation. So you'll get a cord to distinguish the fact that you graduated with honors in public health. We are planning on videotaping this information session, so does anybody have any issues with that? Awesome, thank you. Did I miss anything? Nailed it. We're cutting that out. Okay.
Okay, so my name is Ann, or my nickname is Dr. Herbert, and I have led this course for the past 2 years. We have 2 teaching assistants for this course because it's a really intensive hands-on course, and one of them is here with us today.
Hi, I'm Annie, and I am a doctoral student at Bloomberg in Population, Family, and Reproductive Health.
And we have 3 current students with us who will be providing details about their experience and their advice from their current in the process perspective.
My name is Anisha. I am obviously a public health studies major, and my project is looking at neuroimaging markers among first episode psychosis patients.
I'm Brad. I'm a senior public health minor in psych. My project is looking at sleep patterns in student athletes at Johns Hopkins.
Hi, I'm Kristen. My project is based on flies, and what we're trying to do is decrease the level of some kind of protein in them and see the effects on lifespan.
Okay, so the purpose here is to give you guys a better sense of what the honors entails so that you can be thinking about it ahead of time. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from previous years that students wish they would have known more about it ahead of time so that they could get things set up in advance. There's a lot of different approaches to doing honors, and there's a lot of different topics that are covered in honors. So hopefully you'll hear some of that spectrum in their stories today. And many students do advise starting early, but even if you can't get something started early on in your time in the public health studies program, there are students who do come up with something kind of last minute and still make it happen. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this. Our goal is that knowing a little bit more will allow you to prepare in advance if that's what you want to do. So the course is a full year, and it's designed to support your process of completing your honors project. It's a big project. It's often the biggest project you will have completed in your undergrad time. It's research-based, and the idea is it's independent research supported by a mentor. And we provide a lot of assistance in terms of writing workshops, how to write academic papers, on methods, qualitative and quantitative methods, how to present, you get practice doing that, how to structure your paper, how to tell a story. We try to touch on all the topics that will help you get this project done, but your real support, your main contact for your work and the critical piece to success in this class is your mentor. You will work very closely with a mentor, and they will be teaching you and guiding you through this process. Often you'll be using their data, and they will be a co-author on this paper if you ever choose to publish. Some people end up working with a whole research team that include postdocs and other research assistants. It kind of depends on the specific situation. And We have here for you today the syllabus we are using for this year. It is subject to change. We do ask the students for feedback every year and try to revise it based on their feedback. The first semester is a lot of support related to getting you the tools you need to get this project ready. And we also provide one-on-one support in terms of we are meeting with students and going over their individual projects because everybody's is different and trying to address their specific needs. The second half of the semester is more hands-off, or the second semester is more hands-off to give you a little bit more time to actually get into the writing even more, to work with us one-on-one, to refine any issues that students are running into. And then, there's deadlines throughout the semester that your mentor has to be aware of, that we kind of break up the paper into sections. So we have the background, methods, discussion, or results and discussion sections. And we go through each one, telling you what's in each one, how to do it. And your mentors have to be aware of these because you have to get your project to a certain point so that you can present it to the class. The other really different thing about this class is it's structured like a seminar, which means it's very interactive. So your peers are providing you feedback. That means the deadlines are important because your peers rely on those deadlines. They rely on your feedback and your input. We're going to let the students tell you a little bit about their experience of the class, and then we'll get into more specific things specifically related to building your mentor relationships and finding a project. But first I want to just go over, this is on the syllabus, and you guys are welcome to look through the syllabus, and there's going to be time for questions later so you can ask more questions. But the general goals of the class are really to assist you in completing your honors thesis, like I already said. And because it's this atmosphere, this seminar atmosphere where we're all supporting each other, we're all providing feedback, the other goals are to create a class atmosphere of mutual respect and cooperation, to assist students in gaining self-understanding about their work process and utilize this understanding for finishing an original research project, to expose students to the research process and the broader role of research in generating knowledge in society, and to support students in building rewarding relationships with mentors and colleagues. The learning objectives are to develop a research question and design a research study with assistance from mentors, complete a publishable quality independent research paper. It doesn't mean you have to publish it, but that's the standard we're going for. Present, explain, and defend academic work to a generally informed audience in class and to a public audience. Communicate professionally and effectively with mentors. Provide critical feedback to peers in a constructive manner. Understand how to retrieve, manage, and correctly use credible sources. Use a reference manager to properly cite sources according to specific journal style. Know how to participate in peer review process by submitting a journal article if desired. Understand ethical considerations of public health research and why they are important. So another resource we have for you today it's just like a little information sheet, and it walks you it gives you an overview of the class, and it walks you through the steps and what to do to prepare for honors. And depending on where you are in this process, you just need to be getting good grades because you need a 3.5 GPA. At some point, there's the process of finding a mentor. We heard from previous students that earlier the better. Come up with an honors project with your mentor. A key kind of date is submit the honors application, and for this upcoming year, the applications are due on August 14th. And then you have to complete the class. There's a lot of requirements. It's structured very differently than most classes. Hopefully they'll speak to that. And then you submit your honors paper. And that's the process. There's kind of some things to think about written out on here, like questions to ask yourself about whether or not this is something you want to do. The important things to know about public health studies honors is that it's research-based. So you will be doing research. So there's not a practice or a program component. It is very much grounded in research. And then there's some tips on how to find out more information. We will be giving presentations this year, as every year, and you are welcome to go to those. Some of our students present at Dreams, some of them present in class, you get to choose. So you're welcome to go to those to see more about their projects. And we can talk more about that in a minute. I want to give the students an opportunity to share, and we'll just start right now just talking about anything you want to say about your experience in the class, and what are the main things you've gained from participating so far?
So I think something that's been really beneficial about the class is the way it's structured. The deadlines kind of like force you to like stay on track with your project, and kind of make your mentor stay on track with your project as well. So I think a lot of times when you do research with a mentor, it's sort of just like filling a gap in the lab, and that's important. But the great thing about honors is it's sort of mutually beneficial when you're helping the lab and the lab's also helping you. So the deadlines kind of keep you on track, and I've also just learned so much about the research project process and how you have like this set of data and you like get some cool like results from analysis, but then how does it become a published paper that's shared with the scientific community? So I've also learned a lot about that process and like sort of the steps from bringing those results into like a full-fledged manuscript.
So I think to start off for me, how many of you guys are interested in like graduate program / pre-med-ish type deal? Okay, pretty much everybody. So I think this class especially, I think it's very focused on kind of getting you prepared for the graduate style of learning, the graduate style of writing. Like if you're going into pre-med, like you're going to be doing independent projects with PIs, and you're gonna have mentors helping you out, and it's not really going to be like a teacher-led necessarily type thing when you're doing research projects after school. So I think the way that the class is structured gives you a lot of freedom. It's structured freedom in the sense that there are deadlines, and we have regular meetings, there's regular feedback given on drafts of methods and background and everything, but at the same time it's a lot of independence, and you have a lot of freedom to kind of do really what you kind of want to do with your project. And I think that's really good if you're definitely thinking about any graduate program, or like doing anything with pre-med, going to medical school. You're gonna have a lot of independence. You're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna be able to do literature review on your own, and how you're gonna be able to gather information on your own. And I think like kind of giving that independence is one of the biggest reasons why I think this class is so beneficial. It's a lot different than a lot of other classes here. There's not like specific like homeworks to do. I mean, we do have deadlines, but it's not like every single week you're doing like a specific homework assignment that you kind of just got to get through. Like everything has a purpose, and like it's all really to help you out. It's not necessarily like, oh, I just got to get this homework done so I can get an A on the test. Like you're building up to a final honors thesis that hopefully you can be proud of, and hopefully you'll learn a lot along the way. But at the same time, you're doing that with a lot of independence. So you really gain a lot through that. So yeah, I think the structure definitely is a good thing for graduate pre-med students.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Anisha and Brad said. One thing I'd like to add on is that the class is relatively small, and so you really get to know each other and your peers, and also you get more time with the instructors and the TAs. And so I think it's really helpful to get like feedback from your peers and your TAs and instructors while you're working on the paper. And everyone's feedback is really helpful, and it's really helpful to like learn from other people's eyes. I also really liked how the first semester was more like we did regular meetings and stuff, but the second semester is more you have your own time, and there's not a lot of class meetings, but there are individual like meetings that you can choose to go to depending on whether you need help or not. And a thing that I gained from this class, I would say, is really learning how to read publications and also how to write a publication. That'll be really important for a lot of people that are pre-med or planning to go to grad school. So yeah.
And I'll add So at the end of every semester, we provide our own, we have the Johns Hopkins course evaluations, but we also provide our own course evaluation where we get more in-depth feedback from students so that we can improve the course. And I just wanted to add a few responses from students saying what they learned from participating in the course. Kristen touched on this, but one student said providing constructive feedback and then critically reading peers' research and topics I am not familiar with challenged me to actively engage in many areas of public health. Another student said I learned a lot more about the research process and the amount of time, dedication, and revision that goes into creating a finished thesis. I also learned how to better incorporate feedback into my work to make it better. So I think that process of not just writing something and then letting it go into the grading ether, but actually iteratively improving it based on your peers' feedback and our feedback is something that students really appreciated about the course.
Okay, and so now I think it's a good time to shift to ask the students about their process of finding a project and establishing a relationship with a mentor. And again, you're going to hear 3 perspectives here. We also have papers from previous students on the table. Those are available on the Blackboard community website. And we've had some students from previous years who have offered to share their email so that if people want to contact them and ask more questions about their process, that's available too. Know that these are just 3 experiences of many, but I think they will shed a light on the reality of how to do this and what are the pitfalls and the benefits of different approaches.
So I first learned what a public health honors thesis was when my sophomore physics lab partner was working on hers, and so every week I'd ask her how's your thesis going, and it was just I was just really excited about what she was doing through the whole process. I went to her final presentation and I thought it was just really cool. And so during my junior year, I started working under a biostatistician at the Johns Hopkins Schizophrenia Center. So I actually took that job because I was really interested in statistics, and I'd taken a lot of biostatistics and statistics courses at Hopkins, and I just wanted to do more research. So I didn't really know much about neuroscience or schizophrenia or psychosis, but I was working under a biostatistician, and in the spring of my junior year, she's like, don't you have an honors thesis that you have to do? And I was like, yeah, I do actually. I want to do an honors thesis. And there was all this neuroimaging data that was just sitting around and no one was really doing anything with it. So she sort of helped me develop a project proposal. And so I kind of had that all settled by the end of my junior year.
For me, I originally came in as a neuroscience major. So when I was a freshman, so my freshman spring, I'm also on the baseball team here at Johns Hopkins. So I was looking for research. I'd been emailing a couple different professors, and I ended up getting an email from the athletic department, just kind of like a flat email that they sent to all the athletes, saying that at Johns Hopkins Bayview, the sleep center, they were looking for 1 or 2 athletes to help them out with a research project idea that they had. Originally, the research project was going to be more based around having student athletes come in and analyzing them for sleep disorders in a lab. When I ended up interviewing with them and talked to them a little bit, we ended up kind of postponing the idea of the project until my sophomore year, and I ended up working on a couple other projects that were a lot more lab-based, wet lab neuroscience projects before my sophomore year when I switched over to public health. And I kind of came up with this idea with my PI about doing a more public health centered sleep research project here at Johns Hopkins on student athletes. We've gotten a grant from Under Armour to use actigraphy bands to basically analyze long-term sleep patterns in student athletes here at Johns Hopkins, which is a lot more public health based than a lot of the other research projects I had been working on throughout my sophomore spring and sophomore fall and freshman spring. I had originally had that as an independent project starting in my sophomore fall, and then I learned about honors my sophomore spring, I'm getting all mixed up, junior fall, I learned about honors, and then I had let my PI know about the honors project, and that was something that maybe I could be working towards to apply for my senior year. So throughout my sophomore year and then throughout my junior year, I was basically collecting pilot data with my independent project, and then applied for honors in my senior fall. And now I'm kind of in the process of doing all the results and the analysis. So I came in with a lot of data and a lot of background, my project was kind of very far along already, but the one thing that I hadn't done was really do a lot of analysis of certain parts of my data, and I hadn't really written anything. So the only thing that I had gotten the star between my sophomore and junior year. So I did, and at the end of the star, you do a poster that you do at Dreams. So I had made some posters. I had done like summary statistics on data, but I hadn't really dove into any like writing. So that was really one of the things that like when I saw honors, that was like one of the goals that I had. Was it kind of lined up perfectly where I was like, I needed to myself feel like I needed to have something written. I wanted to work my way towards a publication with my independent project, and honors was a great way to do that, and everything kind of lined up. But I definitely, and we had talked about this last class, where there's a lot of people in the class that started at different times. Like for me, I started in my lab freshman year, and I kind of built a good relationship with my PI, so I kind of hit the ground running a little bit more than other students in the class have. But there's still, like we've said, like there's definitely, you can do it either way. Like you can start early and kind of develop, a relationship and maybe work on some other projects and maybe find your way towards your own independent project. Or you can start a little bit later, hop on a project, have a lot of data like Anisha has, like she had data already, which is awesome too, and you can work with a mentor that way. The point is that there's a lot of different routes to basically getting to be in honors. You don't have to have an independent research project that you've done. You can get with a mentor junior year. You can feel out different mentors. If you don't, if you start earlier and you don't necessarily like a lab, you still have time to then switch and maybe get with another mentor, get on another project, something like that. So like for me, like I said, it was a little bit more independent, but that's not the only way that it has to be done. So.
I actually did some research in high school, and I found a PI at Hopkins that actually did the same kind of research. And so that kind of research was very much biology-based bench work. And so when I found out about public health honors, I was kind of unsure whether my research would work for the project, because we do a lot of bench work and stuff, and there's not much public health significance. So I talked to my PI, and he managed to find me a project that I could do that has some public health significance. So even if you might not think that something might not have public health significance, I recommend that you talk to your PI and just hopefully your PI has something for you, it can recommend something for you.
Also, I know Ms. Henry just left. Talk to your advisors as well. So, if you're worried about whether or not your project is going to be public health enough for honors, talk to your advisors and they'll be able to tell you. They'll be able to give you advice on, whether or not, there's a lot of different ways that you can add public health significance to your papers. And even when you write your thesis, you can really kind of focus maybe on certain parts of a project that have public health significance versus ones that aren't. Or maybe within your lab, there's different projects that they're working on, and maybe for your public health honors thesis, if you're working on multiple projects at one time, maybe you can pick one that might have more public health significance than the others. Talk to your advisors about that, because they'll be able to give you good advice.
Out of everyone in the class, I would say these students in a way are more similar to each other than the rest of the students. So you're getting a little bit a narrower perspective than what the actual reality is. There was going to be a few other students here on the panel who got sick or had conflicts, and one of them wrote to say, I want them to know that they don't have to be a part of a traditional lab with an ongoing trial or study for their thesis. I'd want them to know that they could use an open data source that fits their interest research question. And so, all of these students used, even quantitative data to some extent. I mean, we do have bench science compared to other type of research, standard public health research, but there are students that we've had in the past who use qualitative data. So are getting their research through doing interviews and focus groups, or using data that has been collected that way. So there's a wide spectrum of possibilities of the types of research. Can you guys speak to advice you would have, given your experience and what you've learned from other students, about how do you actually approach a mentor, and then also how do you get talking about a potential project?
So, I guess, I've kind of worked in 2 labs at Hopkins. One is like very public health focused at the Center for Adolescent Health at Bloomberg. And then one is like more neuroscience focused at the Schizophrenia Center. Schizophrenia Center lab is where I'm doing my honors thesis, so it's kind of like, I don't know, like maybe I should have done it the other way around, but whatever. But I worked in both of those labs for like 1 or 2 semesters before I started talking to my mentors about independent projects. And I think that's honestly the best way to go about it, because when you do an independent project with the lab, there's sort of the expectation that what you're doing should be like mutually beneficial, so it should benefit the lab and the mentor and the people you're working with, but then also obviously benefit yourself because it's an independent project. And I think when you spend a semester or 2 like getting to know people in the lab, you kind of have an idea of like what the current research is, like what are like gaps in research, what are like the needs of the lab, and like how can you help fill in those needs and like sort of create like an independent project. So I think like after working in a semester or 2 in both of those labs, I did speak to maybe not like the head PI of the lab, but like a postdoc or one of my superiors who I spent a lot of time with about the opportunities available to do independent research, and it was always like really favorably received. I think for the most part, like people like students who are like go-getters and like want to delve into science. So I say like don't be afraid to do it. And I'm sure like even if you don't have an established relationship already with a lab, people are really friendly, especially at Bloomberg. Like if you just send them an email and say like I'm really interested in like the work that you're doing and I want to learn more, and set up a meeting with any professors and stuff that way, people are really happy to talk about their research. And maybe from there you can start about forming a relationship and seeing what opportunities there are for independent work.
So I have 2 things. I think the first thing is, like I said, the way that I found my project was literally a blanket email that was received by over however many student athletes there are, like 500. So like, don't think that just because like it's a blanket email that's sent from the school saying, hey, we're looking for 1 position, don't think that, oh, like there's going to be so many people, there's no way I'm ever going to get that. Like, even if it's something that you're really interested in, send them an email or respond or however they're saying, and just give it a try. And like, I was one of 5 that responded to that, and they interviewed all of us and ended up getting the position. So that's first tip. Second tip was before that, one of my upperclassmen baseball friends who was a senior, who was a public health major, gave me advice on trying to find a research project. And one of the best things that I think that he had told me was go on to the johnsHopkinsMedicine.com website and go to Find a Doctor. And there's a tab that says Find a Doctor, and then there's a search bar on there. And you can literally type in anything you want. So any interest that you have, you can type in, if it's reproductive health, if it's sleep research, anything that you have, and it will come up with a list of all of the doctors in the Johns Hopkins realm that are doing those kinds of research projects. because within each bio of the doctor, they have tags on what kind of research they do. So I think that's a really, really efficient way to find doctors that are really, really focused on the research that you would be interested in. So going into that search bar and just kind of typing in whatever you want, it will come up with a bio of every single one of the doctors that do research in those specific realms. And all you have to do is, it's integrated with your email. You just type in the first and last name of the doctor in your Outlook email, and it'll come up with their email. And that's a really good way. Also, within those bios, they have their previous work, where they graduated, all that kind of stuff. I would look at one or two of their papers and see if it's something that interests you, see if their style of research is kind of, lining up with what your interests are, and then maybe, within your email, obviously, like Anisha said, obviously express interest, say that you're very interested in your work, maybe give a couple snippets from, hey, I really liked your paper, when you talked about this and this, I really like the style of this paper, and I felt like that was kind of the best advice that I had gotten. And before I ended up getting my project, I ended up getting like 5 or 6 responses back from all kinds of doctors down at both Bloomberg and the hospital, that all responded and said, hey, like if you'd like to come down and meet the team, if it's something that you'd be interested in. Like I think it kind of gets a bad rap where people are like, oh, you got to send out 50 emails and you get 2 responses back. I don't know if that's, in my experience, and some of my friends, I haven't really seen that be as true. I think they're a lot more receptive than they get credit for. They really, like Anisha said, they like go-getters. They like people who are be very upfront with what your interests are, what you're looking for in the lab. If honors is something that you're thinking about down the road, that's probably something you want to bring up early so that you can kind of get that ball moving. Whether or not they either have a project that's kind of already lining up with that, or if that's going to set you up to maybe do something independent down the road. But yeah, I think that's probably the best advice that I can give, that will really be able to let you hopefully line up with your interests, because ultimately that's probably what's going to make you the most happy with your research project. So
I just want to add really quickly that you could work with a physician or somebody in the medical school. There are also people at Bloomberg School of Public Health or professors here at Homewood. They're all available, and the professors at Homewood have much more experience working with undergrads. So that can be a real asset if you find somebody who's aligned, because they understand the level of support, whereas sometimes if you start working with somebody from Bloomberg even, they might not understand, they're used to working with masters and PhDs, so there's usually a learning curve about how to support undergrads there. It's possible, but it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, Bradley, that's a great suggestion. There's also a similar search function for research mentors on the Bloomberg website as well. So that you can look for doctors through the JHMI website, but you can also look for Bloomberg specific researchers through the Bloomberg website. Okay.
I think we have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, just on that note, do they have to be Johns Hopkins affiliated faculty, or do they be from another university?
As far as I know, they have to be Johns Hopkins. At least there has to be somebody on the team within Johns Hopkins. Do you guys?
I don't know about honors. I know that it's probably most likely that they are Hopkins affiliated. I know for independent academic work at times we have allowed it to be a non-Hopkins affiliated, especially over the summer. So that's something we'll have to look into. But I don't know for sure.
It's probably in your interest if they are, in the sense that they have an added incentive to not drop the ball, because you're really reliant on them. You want to speak to this?
Yeah, so I found my PI by a similar way that Brad said. And so I just typed in a research topic that I was familiar with, and I found my PI and I emailed him. And then I was invited to do an interview and everything. But as for approaching my paper or my honors project, I see him all the time when I go to lab because he's always there. And so I just would knock on his door and be like, I have a project that I want to do, and I was wondering if you could help me with it. And my PI is very helpful with everything, and including all the other undergrads in our lab too. And so he managed to help me find a project, and he's very responsive, so make sure to find a PI that's very responsive and helpful for your project.
I just also want to note that we also have a student and have had students before who have, some of these already have sort of like our Wilson Scholars and have their own independent research going on, but who have a research question and a data set that they want to work with, and they find a faculty member who is interested in mentoring them through that project. So an ideal scenario is probably to join somebody else's project, or work with data that your mentor is familiar with, but it has been done where a student sources their own, in this case it's publicly available data, and finds a mentor who's willing to work with them on that. And I also have some advice from students from last year for working with mentors. So the question was, what advice do you have for future students about how to work effectively with mentors? And much of this was centered around setting expectations early on with your mentor. So one student said, speak with your mentor before beginning about their expectations for you and your expectations for them. Another student said, don't be afraid to say you're confused or need help with it, which is probably our most common challenge that we face, is that students are a bit intimidated and don't feel comfortable basically saying, I don't know, to their mentors, or that doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain it another way? And then another student said, prioritize and vocalize your goals in the first meeting. If this is your first research paper, directly express that you will need more hands-on mentorship with writing and data analysis. If your mentor has a postdoc or another research mentor, get to know them or ask for their contact information because they may be more available for assistance and are familiar with your project. That's also very common. I think maybe some of you can speak to that oftentimes there are other people on the research team who wind up sort of taking a mentorship role as well. And then create a concrete plan of when to meet and make sure you stick to it. This person said their mentor and them did not stick to their plan very well. And then feel free to ask questions and inform them of your project needs and timeline well in advance.
And I'm going to ask the students to answer one more set of questions, and then we'll open it up to you guys to ask questions to any of us here. And so the last question that I have is, what do you think is important for upcoming students to know about the honors seminar? And I'm kind of interested specifically in what are some things that kind of go wrong that you didn't know about, or that you could look out for, or just be aware of, or what makes this class, what is the work in this class? What is the challenge in this class? So any approach you want to take to addressing that?
So I guess two challenges that I had when I first started in the course were in the beginning of the fall semester there's kind of a flurry of deadlines, and I thought I was I've got this, I'm on top of this. I was not. And these deadlines just kind of snuck up on me, and I ended up turning I think 80% of stuff late. So I would just make sure you stay organized and put everything in your calendar, especially in the first semester when you're sort of unfamiliar with the format of how the course is, because the way it works is you write a draft, and then you have to put it in an online Dropbox, and then you have to read someone else's draft and provide feedback. And if you don't do that, then someone doesn't get feedback, and so you have to make sure you stay on top of that. And then there's also just a lot of you have to do the city human research training in the fall semester, and that kind of takes a whole day because it's just you have to go through the modules and everything. So just make sure that you sort of pay attention to what's going on with all of the deadlines at the beginning of the semester. And then another challenge I had was I'm just a public health major. I'm not a neuroscience major, and my project was is in neuropsychiatry. So I didn't really have a lot of background. And again, like the reason I kind of started working on this project was because of my interest in like statistical methods. And so I didn't have a lot of background, and I was very, very panicked like in November about my background section because I just didn't really understand like the clinical significance of what I was doing, because it was like imaging data and like getting all this data from like fMRIs, and like how do you explain what an fMRI is to someone, and I was really, really panicked. And I remember I had a Skype call with Annie, and I just had all of this like text in my background section, but it wasn't really connecting to a research story. And what really helped was like Annie just kind of gave me like bullet points of like, okay, this is what you need to hit to like kind of explain your research story. And after that, it sort of clicked for me. And so what's really great about this class is if you are struggling, like you can just send an email out to the TAs or Dr. Herbert, and they're super responsive, like within a day, if not the same day, a few hours later. So definitely like take advantage of them as resources, especially in terms of sort of like structuring your paper and like the research story that you want to tell, and like what the public health significance is. Because I think it's very easy to get bogged down in like all the details of this thesis project, but you also have to be able to step back and see like what the large picture is of the story you're trying to tell.
I have a couple points. I think that one of the challenges for me that I guess necessarily wasn't a challenge for me, but something that like some other friends in the course I felt had problems with, was the background. I think is very important for a lot of research projects, and I think a lot of when you're dealing with mentors and PIs that have been doing this for 20, 25 years, like a lot of the times they assume a lot. They assume that you know everything going in, like they assume that, like Anisha said, she's a public health major and she's doing something that's a lot more maybe neuroscience based, but like a lot of the times they aren't gonna really make the connection that you might not be a neuroscience expert. Hopefully they're able to see that, and they're able to give you a lot of tips and a lot of papers to guide you into having a good background knowledge for your project before you really get going. And for me, I was lucky enough to have a PI that basically made me for like over a month and a half, 2 months, before I really did anything. He made me make all of these like summaries of like 20 or 30 research papers. That's all I did, like when I went into lab. Like it was like, I remember I was like, why am I here? Like what am I doing? Like I thought I was doing research, not doing like, like essays on all of these projects. And it ended up being super helpful for me because, I was a neuroscience major, but at the same time, like I had sleep as one little module in cognitive neuroscience class. Like I really wasn't like that familiar with really what sleep was, and like really how research papers are structured, how people go about, doing the methods and results, and all of these different things that you're really able to pick up if you do take a lot of time to look at literature. Like reading research papers is a skill in itself. Like I think that if you have a mentor that you think might be assuming that you know a lot of things, another thing that like what Annie was saying, like don't be afraid to be like, hey, like I don't really know what I'm doing. Like I've never done research before. I've never read a research paper before. How do you think I should go about reading these? What are some papers that you could point me to that would give me a good background for this project before we get going? Because I think for me that was really, really helpful, because once you actually then get the data and you actually start going through the methods and doing the results, if you have all that background beforehand, you're gonna have to do it anyways. The first 6 weeks of class are all background. So you can either do it beforehand and get a good start on it, or you can wait until honors and do it in 6 weeks, and it'll probably be a little bit tougher. But I think that background is really, really important. I think that it really teaches you hopefully how to read research papers quickly and efficiently, and really gives you a lot of good tips and gets your project going in the right direction from the get-go. Another thing, I think if you're gonna be in a statistical-esque research project, it might be in your benefit to take, I know like for me, one of the classes is like an intro level class. One of the classes that I took that was, in my opinion, super beneficial for me was Intro to Computing, just because it ended up teaching me just kind of coding, and like it was very rudimentary and very intro based, but like it just kind of taught you how it's a different world when you're coding, and like if you're doing anything, you know, with statistics, and like it is a different way of reproducing information and talking about information, especially if you're coding. Like you have to think about a lot of things differently when you're coding. Like you have to tell the computer, it's like a 3-year-old, you have to tell the computer what to do in every single step of the way. And that's a different way of thinking about stuff, especially when you're at such a high level at Johns Hopkins and you're used to taking shortcuts and you don't have to, you know, think about every single step that you're doing. It's a different way to, you know, think about things, and I think maybe if you know that that's gonna be a part of your project, as opposed to trying to learn it all yourself or trying to focus and rely on your PI to teach you everything that you need about statistics and coding, it may be in your interest to take, you know, I know biostats is a required course, right? I think. Biostats is a
Yes.
required course?
Yeah.
I took it, I think it still is, yeah. So that's a good course, and it's like, it definitely is an intro course for like doing R and statistics, but you know, I think if you are gonna be focused on statistics, statistical analysis 1 and 2 were really helpful for me as far as getting theory and methods down. Intro to Computing is really helpful as far as getting coding down, so if that's kind of where you guys are headed, I would suggest those. But also talk to your advisors. Like, Ms. Henry's awesome.
Just
Like,
really quickly, like, you don't have to take like a ton of like statistical courses in computing if you don't necessarily want to. There's the health data analysis practicum. It's like a 1-semester class that's like in the public health studies department that I think will like prepare you and like really well for honors. So like you don't have to like worry about that, like, oh my gosh, I have all these classes I need to take, I have to like build this like, you know, background in statistics. Don't like freak out about that. Just, I think health data analysis practicum, if you can take it, is really beneficial. If you can't, like, you'll figure it out. But it's taught by the same professors for the biostats class.
and like communicating with everybody is really big. So like, if you're like, hey, I don't know, you know, I don't think I am very good on this specific topic, communicating that with, if you have a PI already, communicating that with your advisors. They can all, I mean, they've been doing this, they know, hey, maybe this might be a class that might help you out. Or your PI might be like, hey, like, here are some things that I've given to my doctoral students that have helped them out with this specific area. If it's statistics, if it's background, it's whatever, like, there's no one way to go about, like, finding the information and learning the information. But I think, like we keep saying, I think making sure that you're upfront with everyone that is helping you along this process, like, let them help you. Like, be like, hey, like, I'm not very certain on this specific thing. Like, I don't know if, you know, my background on this topic is really that strong. What should I do? I don't know if how much do I really need to know about statistics to be successful with this project? Like, make sure that you're asking all of these questions to your mentors, to your advisors, and let them help you out, so.
I think my biggest challenge in the course was definitely just timing everything right. I remember in the very beginning, while I was starting the project, I sat down with my mentor and just did a timeline of everything. And so it ended up working out, but I think near the middle of it, my mentor, who is a postdoc and not actually my PI, but my postdoc had some emergency situation and she had to fly to another country, and I couldn't reach her for like 6 weeks, I would say. So there was like this empty time where I just wasn't doing anything, but I needed to get stuff done, but I couldn't without her. So it was really frustrating because I was scared that I wasn't going to get my results in on time, and your results have to be done mid-February at the latest so that you have time to write your paper by the end of February. And so I think that was my biggest challenge, but definitely communication's key, and it's just really important to make sure you keep track of time.
I think, you know, students gave responses consistent with that, definitely starting early and communicating with your mentor early. Something that somebody else said is, or recommended, was to do a secondary data analysis, which we also highly recommend, especially if you're doing human subjects research. We have had students try to do primary data collection. I don't think we've had a student do human subjects research with primary data collection that worked out. And then,
Hopefully.
your data's already collected.
Yeah, it's already
Yeah,
collected.
Right, no, we mean that it hadn't been collected by the
Right.
time honors
Mhm.
started.
Oh,
Could
that's
she?
impossible.
Yeah.
Was that collected after honors?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, well, we had one student. But Kristen's also doing primary data collection, and that was a bit stressful, so, for your own stress levels, we recommend doing secondary analysis.
And in the application requires that your mentor signs off on this and that you've thought through your project, you know a little bit, enough to fill out kind of a summary of the background, the methods, you know what your data source is, and you know the public health significance because you've talked with them, you've maybe read a few papers about it already. And the reason for the application is we want to make sure you're proposing a project that you can actually do. So if you propose something that's really advanced, we'll probably come back to you and really make sure you have the mentor support to achieve that. So for example, longitudinal analysis is probably not recommended for most people. There are exceptions to that, you know, for people who are really specialized in stats, you know, I think you could have probably done that. But that's not available to everybody, and it's really for your own benefit, so you can succeed in the class. And before we open up to questions, I just want to add that I think a unique and nice feature of this class is that because everybody's working on different projects, has totally different mentors, it feels, I hope, very collegial in the sense of we're all supporting each other and it's not competitive. So it is not, we are not comparing who's doing better, who's further along. It's not even comparable. We're really just trying to get everybody to the best paper that they can get based on what their goals are for the class. Some people start this class wanting to publish a paper. Some people want to win the honors award, and some people just want to get honors and just get done. And so we have you define that at the beginning and try to keep you on track based on your goals. So now, if you guys have any questions for anyone, now's the good time to ask those.
By participating in honors, are we still able to apply for things like grants and funding? Aside from that, or since we're getting credit, are we not allowed to do that?
As far as I know, you cannot get paid for something that you are getting credit for. So I don't know about different grants or research awards of that nature, but you can get paid for the work you're doing if you're getting credit for the work you're doing.
So kind of speaking to that, like not my honors project, but I got it like the fall of my sophomore, junior, I don't remember, fall of 1 year in college. And I used it to help me with like primary data collection, and then like that project, just like I'm still working on it. So like right now, this semester, I'm doing like credit for that project, but like it's like the funding was from like a while ago with the primary data collection, and now I'm doing like the data analysis, and I'm working this semester for like 3 credits. I don't know if that like answers your question, but
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah.
okay.
We definitely have had students who are Woodrow Wilson fellows, and there's a bunch of, it sounds like grants or fellowships that support undergrads, and as far as I know, those are okay. I think it's probably more of a case-by-case basis, and so it's something you should go to the advisors and ask about in terms of, is the situation. I think the thing that's very cut and dry is your mentor cannot pay you to do this work directly. So it's, it's a little bit tricky, but, that's something you can ask in specific situations.
I also just want to note that The 2 students whose emails we'll be providing, who from last year, who offered to answer any questions, both did qualitative analyses. So if you're more interested in that type of analysis, they'll be able to answer your questions.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, so I just want to make sure you guys know what's available to you today. So again, there's examples of previous years completed honors theses that are of great quality. There is an information sheet that says Public Health Studies Honors at the top. There's the syllabus from this year, and there's the application for next year, so, or this coming year. So all of this information is also available on the Community Blackboard site, and that is where you submit your application. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
You should take the health data analysis project. It's like the best class I took in undergrad.
I got another question. I was wondering what your time commitments were outside of like class meeting time. Like how much time do you spend per week on this?
For me, it kind of varies, I guess. It sort of depends on like what I'm trying to get done. I have pretty regular meetings with like the postdoc I work with and a biostatistician. Those are either weekly or bi-weekly, and for each of those meetings I kind of have a goal that, you know, we're gonna, because we don't want to like talk about the same stuff we talked about at our last meeting, so I want to like provide like new information, like show results of new analyses, things like that. So like those meetings in themselves tend to be like an hour or 2 hours, and then just like independently like working on my own to meet the deadlines of those meetings as well as course deadlines. Probably at least an hour a week, but again, it's probably more when it comes up to, you know, there's going to be a presentation in class this week or a draft due this week.
What's the most? Just have a spectrum.
Oh, I could like spend like the whole weekend working on my thesis, but maybe like 5 hours or so. I don't know. It kind of just depends.
For me, it really, I mean, I've been working on this for 5 semesters now, and every single semester has been different. I haven't been working on a specific project, but I've been working with my PI in the lab for 5 semesters. And every semester is different just because I have different classes times, I have different commitments. So with baseball, in season, out of season, it's a lot, like it changes a lot for me as far as time commitments I can put towards certain things. Like for this semester specifically, I haven't had to take as many classes just because I'm a senior and I did a lot. I'm pretty much almost done with a lot of my credits. So I was able to have Monday and Wednesday off. So before practice, I go there from 9 to 2. So I go to the lab from 9 to 2 on Mondays and Wednesdays, just because I had those free. But like in the fall, I was only able to go like 1 day a week for 3 or 4 hours. But then like during my STAR, during that whole summer for 3 months, I was going there 8 to 5. So, I mean, it just depends. It's really like Anisha said, it's really kind of what you have to get done. I mean, I'm working on multiple projects within my lab. So like this specific, for what I'm doing for honors specifically, like when I go down there, I spend probably 2 to maybe an hour or 2 on this specific project when I go down there each Monday and Wednesday, and then the other time is spent on doing a lot of data analysis for other projects that I'm working on down there. So like, and like I do work study for those projects, so I was able to get it approved through the student whatever office, that I could do work study and get paid for the work and count those hours not towards my honors because you can't get paid for those. So I was able to count those hours that I logged for other projects towards work study and getting paid for that and not getting paid for certain projects. So you're able to do that. And like for me again, like it's really kind of just really whatever you need to get done, that's kind of how much time you spend. I mean like there were times like when I did the STAR in the summer where we had like we got approved for like a national research conference, and it was like way earlier than we thought, and I ended up having to put together like a poster in like 4 days, and it was really, really hard. So I was like working like 10 or 12 hours during this. But again, that was the only thing I was doing in the summer. So it's kind of all, it's about balance. I mean, you're able to balance it. I think there's some people, you know, in the class that, you know, kind of just meet their PIs when they need to meet with them. And it's a lot, they might like Skype a lot. I've Skyped my PI a lot in the past just because I wouldn't have time to go down to Bayview. Like last semester, almost every single meeting was a Skype call, just because I'm able to, like he's able to set up stuff with, I can use basically like a cloud thing to get on my computer down at Bayview from my laptop here, so I can do my research analysis and use the computers there with the data on campus, so I don't have to take an hour to go back and forth. But yeah, as far as time commitment, it's gonna differ for everybody. It's gonna, I mean, if you're working on multiple projects, obviously that's gonna be more time. Again, like for me, like when I was getting paid, you have to be there. So like if you're volunteering versus if you're getting paid, or if you're on a grant or something, like that's probably gonna affect how much time you're actually gonna put in. Like if you're volunteering and, you know, a big test comes up and like you're like, hey, I have an exam this week, is it okay if I, you know, maybe don't come in or something? Like if you're in a volunteering type environment, it's probably gonna be a little bit more lenient that way. But if, you know, if you're on a salary, if you're getting paid, if you're doing work study, it's, you know, a little bit more hard on. Obviously, like, you know, it's gonna vary, but you would have a little bit higher level of commitment, but you'd be getting paid. So it's kind of like a balancing act. As far as, yeah, it's gonna differ for everybody, but you're probably gonna be able to work it in with however you want it to. So like, I wouldn't, if you don't have time to take on multiple projects, don't take on multiple projects. You know, if you want to use like intercession to get really ahead in your project so you can maybe not be as hands-on during the semester and focus on your classes a little bit more, do that. You know, that's like intercession is a really good time to get ahead in the summer, and using that is a really good time to get ahead on data analysis and maybe even data collection, so you're not doing that as much during the semester. So yeah, it's all a balancing act, but I don't know.
Yeah, I disagree. I think it depends on the person and their availability. Depends on my schedule personally and also my mentor's schedule, so I just try to work within that and just see how much time I can allot to my project.
Can you give a range of hours?
It could be from like 1 to like 8 hours a week.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Can you guys speak a little bit to what your commitments to other classes and extracurricular activities look or felt like with this honors work, especially in the first semester? How was your course load balance, your work-school balance, your life balance? Was there one?
Okay, so I am simultaneously applying to grad school, so that was kind of tough because I was just flying across the country in the middle of the week and then coming back. So missing school and having to make up that coursework and then stay on top of like research. So on top of my honors project, I was also working on another research project, and I took how many Bloomberg classes? I took three Bloomberg classes first semester, and each quarter, and then my honors class, and then on top of that, I was a student or president of like a student group, student leader or whatever. So it felt like a lot. It still is a lot, but I think like just trying to do things that make you feel good and like, you know, just make you feel sane. Like I run a lot, so I did a lot of running and like, you know, went out to dinner with friends sometimes and just like kind of plan things to look forward to get me through some of the rough parts, because exams tend to all happen at the same time, unfortunately. Yeah, so it's a lot, but if you love research and you want to have a research career and you are planning on applying to grad school, I think this is a really great way to sort of transition you into like what that's going to be like. I actually used the background section for my honors thesis as like a writing sample for a grad program, and I got in, so that was like super exciting. Yeah, so it's definitely doable. It's a lot of work, but if your future goals sort of align with that, I would recommend it.
So I'm in AED, which is the pre-med honors study. You guys should definitely sign up for the mentee program. I'm not gonna plug that right now, but if you wanna sign up for that, that's a good thing to do if you're pre-med. And what I tell all of my mentees at AED is always the earlier you decide what you're gonna do with your life, the easier it is. Cause like, for me, that's with my like experience just with myself and a lot of friends, like if you're able to kind of figure out kind of what your goals are, the earlier you're able to do that, the easier it's gonna be. Like, I'm not saying that you can't do it if you change later, or if you figure out later, it's just gonna make it a little bit tougher. Like, for example, like for me, like, I always knew I wanted to do pre-med, so I came in and I got, started really early with a lot of the pre-med courses, and I was able to get a lot of those out of the way early, but I thought I was gonna do like a lot of like neuroscience and like go that way for sure. I was dead set on doing that, and I really didn't open myself up to really a lot of other classes. Figured out that like the hard neuroscience really wasn't my kind of track that I wanted to do. Took a public health class, really liked it, and then didn't switch until like my sophomore fall or sophomore spring, which then I had to take, I had to take more classes in my junior year than I probably would have had to if I would have originally came in with an idea. What I'm trying to say is that every single decision that you're gonna make hopefully is gonna ultimately get you to the goal that you're trying to do after college. So if that's pre-med, I think that like especially doing honors and like doing research is definitely something you want to think about early. And at the same time, I think that with extracurriculars and stuff for me, it's always been a balancing act, but it's always been like what I've been doing outside of school has always like been there, and it's hard for me to say, but do what you want to do, like Anisha said, like that's definitely a really big thing. Is that especially if you're pre-med, and even graduate programs too, like if you're doing what you're liking and you're doing what you want to do, it's gonna make that really, really easy to talk about in interviews. And they're, like, the admissions officers know, like, if you really didn't like what you were doing when you were in undergrad. And when you talk about it in interviews and you really, really enjoyed what you did and you're able to talk about that and that you're able to convey that through an application and through your interviews, they're really gonna be able to see that. Do what you want to do is definitely a really big step. And I think that trying to figure out your path early on will be really helpful as far as you not having to like overload yourself later on in your career. Just because you're able to take the classes early on that is really kind of towards building your major. And
I just want to switch to Kristen real quick because we're almost at the end of our time.
Last semester I had a very busy schedule. I was dealing with research, classes, volunteering, MCAT studying. So it was a lot on my plate, but I found that if I worked on my paper a little bit every week, then I made a lot of progress at the end, so that really helped me.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, there are ways to do research without doing honors. So I think one of the big things to do is, talk to current students, look at the application, talk to mentors, feel it out. And if this feels like something that feels good for you, then whether or not you want to do research or not, but it just feels exciting, it gives you energy, then definitely pursue it, consider it. If it feels stressful and like a weight, you might want to choose to do something else with your time. You could be a very successful person without doing honors. You could have a research career without doing honors. It is a great opportunity to feel that out if it fits within your overall goals within your senior year and your time.
Just one quick thing, like I think as a general tip, I think it's probably best for the first semester that you're thinking about doing research to do it volunteer, and not tie yourself down with trying to do work study or getting paid for it, and have that extra kind of sense of stress and commitment towards it, because it may not be something that that may fit with what you want to do. So yeah, I think volunteering at least at the beginning, and then you can always switch. I think going in originally kind of volunteering and kind of being a little bit more, with a little bit less commitment is probably best to feel it out, so.
So are there any last questions? So be sure to pick up the papers, our contact information's there, we're available, your advisors are available, current students are available, and some previous students are available. So please be in touch as questions arise.
And we'll get the information up on your Blackboard community page. These pieces will be up as soon as possible. The application itself may take a little bit longer, but that should be up before the end of the semester, so.
Thank you all for being here
Thank
and
you.
offering this information, and thank you all for attending.